At number 10, Orikan the Diviner. Trazyn the Infinite is the overlord of the tomb world Salamis, the self-appointed curator of the galaxy's greatest collection and quite possibly the meanest kleptomaniac in 40k history. His museum is filled with living exhibits frozen in stasis, and at one point he even added his greatest rival to the display, one of the finest cryptechs in the Necron race, Orikan the Diviner. He specializes in chronomancy, a branch of Necron science that lets him manipulate time. Orikan can glimpse possible futures, rewind brief moments, and change the outcome of events that should already be settled. He and Trazyn have spent thousands of years stealing artifacts from each other, sabotaging each other's expeditions, and arguing over ancient history. Their feud caused chaos across the galaxy, and even played a part in the destruction of a world during the events of the Infinite and the Divine. During one chapter of that rivalry, Orikan broke into Solemnus to steal an ancient artifact known as the Astrarium Mysterios. Trazyn saw the theft coming, laid a trap, and ambushed his old rival inside a Tesseract labyrinth, a pocket dimension prison designed to hold even the galaxy's most dangerous beings. For anyone else, that would have been the end of the story, but Orikan got out the only way the greatest chronomancer could. Every time the trap closed around him, he turned back time and started the escape all over again. He repeated the same escape attempt over and over, changing tiny details each time until he finally found one sequence of events where he slipped past the trap. He spent more than 2,000 years reliving the same failed escape until he finally solved it. Orikan eventually escaped, which is exactly what you'd expect from someone who can manipulate time, but the fact that Trazyn even managed to capture one of the most powerful Necrons says a lot about the way he thinks. Orikan opens the list because he never stayed in the collection for long. Every exhibit is something Trazyn managed to keep. Most people spend years trying to defeat their greatest rival. Trazyn caught his and managed to put him in a display case. Number 9. The Tyranid Battlefield Displays. Walking through Salamis doesn't feel like visiting a normal museum. Some exhibits are entire battles, frozen at the exact moment Trazyn decided they were worth preserving. One of Trazyn's displays recreates a battle against Hive Fleet Kraken, one of the Tyranid Hive fleets responsible for devouring countless worlds across the galaxy. He didn't settle for mounting a few Tyranid specimens behind glass. He preserved the entire battlefield exactly as it was, freezing the moment in time with swarms of Tyranids charging forward while Imperial Guardsmen and Space Marines make their final stand. Trazyn's attention to detail is honestly disturbing. While putting the display together, one of the Sisters of Battle, Satine, was damaged beyond saving. Most people would have just found another exhibit. Trazyn had a different idea. He took Satine's surviving organs, one of her hands, and even one of her eyes, then transplanted them into another captured Sister of Battle named Clara until the display looked exactly the way he wanted. Once he was happy with it, he froze them both in a new exhibit simply called War. The Tyranid battlefield takes 9th place because it's the first exhibit that shows how far Trazyn will go in the name of historical accuracy. Collecting Tyranids is impressive on its own. Rebuilding people to make the display look exactly the way he wanted reveals the mindset of someone who sees living beings as museum pieces. Number 8. The Thunder Warriors. Long before the Space Marines existed, the Emperor created another army to unite Terra. They were called the Thunder Warriors. They were larger and stronger than the Space Marines who came after them, but their bodies were unstable and many didn't survive for long. After the Unification Wars, they disappeared from history, and by the 41st millennium, most people believe they are completely extinct. Trazyn, of course, has one in his collection. No one knows exactly when or how he acquired the Thunder Warrior, only that a sole survivor now stands among the exhibits of Salamis. For Imperial historians, finding a living Thunder Warrior would answer questions that have been debated for thousands of years. Trazyn already solved that mystery by putting one in his museum. The Thunder Warrior claims the 8th spot because this is a piece of Imperial history that was almost erased completely. Most people in the 41st millennium don't even know the Thunder Warriors existed. Trazyn somehow preserved one anyway, giving his museum something the Imperium itself no longer has. At number 7, the Fall of Cadia Collection. Trazyn was there when Cadia fell. He witnessed the destruction of the Imperium's greatest fortress world, and after the battle was over, he decided it belonged in his collection. When Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade finally destroyed the fortress world that had stood for 10,000 years, Trazyn was there. He originally arrived to deal with the warp's interference with the Celestial Orrery, but it's hard to believe he would have missed one of the biggest events in Imperial history anyway. As the battle reached its climax, he joined the fighting and unleashed warriors, monsters, and ancient heroes from his own collection to hold back the forces of chaos. When it became clear that Cadia was doomed, Trazyn did what Trazyn always does. He teleported away with new additions to his museum. The Fall of Cadia now has its own gallery on Salamis. Somewhere inside a Necron museum on a tomb world in the Eastern Fringe sits a preserved piece of the battle that shattered the Imperium and split the galaxy in two. The Fall of Cadia ranks 7th because almost everyone else remembers it as a tragedy. Trazyn remembers it as an acquisition. That's the difference between being a historian and being Trazyn the Infinite. Number 6. The Battle of Calth. The Horus Heresy was the bloodiest civil war in Imperial history. It began when War Master Horus turned against the Emperor, splitting the Space Marine legions and plunging the galaxy into years of war. One of its earliest disasters was the Battle of Calth, where the Word-Bearers launched a surprise attack on the Ultramarines and left the planet in ruins. Somewhere inside Solemnis, that battle is still happening. Trazyn preserved part of the conflict in stasis, freezing Space Marines, weapons, and the fighting itself at the exact moment he decided it belonged in his museum. Instead of reading about the Horus Heresy in a history book, he can simply walk through one of its battlefields whenever he wants. The Battle of Calth sits at 6th because history usually survives through books and stories. Trazyn preserved the battle itself. Walking through this gallery is about as close as anyone can come to stepping back into the Horus Heresy without using a time machine. Number 5. The Custodian Guard. The Adeptus Custodes are the Emperor's personal bodyguards. Each is handcrafted through the Emperor's own advanced genetic engineering. A single custodian can slaughter entire enemy squads. Their duty has always been to protect the master of mankind. There are only around 10,000 custodians, and most never leave Terra. For the average citizen of the Imperium, seeing one in person is almost impossible. This makes the custodian standing in Trazyn's museum on Solemnis a shocking sight. While the exact details remain a mystery, Trazyn likely used his advanced Necron technology to bypass the warrior's godlike strength. He most likely ambushed the custodian 10,000 years ago during the chaos of the Horus Heresy, or intercepted him during a secret mission in the Webway. By deploying a Tesseract Labyrinth, Trazyn could have instantly snatched the warrior without ever having to fight him hand-to-hand. The custodian reaches the halfway point because these warriors are almost impossible to encounter, let alone capture, but Trazyn looked at one of the Emperor's finest warriors and decided it belonged in his museum. Number 4. Ursarkar Creed. As Lord Castellan, Ursarkar Creed spent years holding back invasion after invasion, earning a reputation as one of the greatest military commanders the Imperium had ever produced. When Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade finally broke Cadia, Creed was still on the front lines, leading the planet's last desperate defense against all odds. Trazyn arrived as the fortress world collapsed around them. He looked at the Lord Castellan making his final stand and decided the galaxy couldn't be trusted with such an important historical figure. So he did what any completely unhinged museum curator would do. He sealed Creed inside a Tesseract Labyrinth, preserving him alive in the exact moment of Cadia's last battle. Creed ranks 4th on this list because Trazyn did not just recover a corpse or build a monument. He actively interrupted one of the greatest last stands in Imperial history to turn its living hero into an exhibit. Somewhere deep inside Solemnis, that display still exists under the grim title The Last Stand of Ursarkar Creed. At number 3, the Krork. Trazyn has a prized possession almost nobody else in the galaxy has ever seen, a living Krork. Long before the Imperium, the Eldar, or even the rise of mankind, the Old Ones created the Krork as living weapons to fight the Necrons during the war in heaven. Modern orcs are basically the downgraded version. A Krork was tougher and smart enough to fight in the biggest war the galaxy has ever seen. Standing next to one would make even the largest orc look like he'd forgotten what he was doing. The specimen in Trazyn's collection stands around 12 feet tall and wears armor so advanced that Fabius Bile himself believed it surpassed even Space Marine power armor. By the 41st millennium, the Krork are believed to have vanished millions of years ago. Their existence survives only in ancient Necron records and the evolutionary trail that eventually led to today's orcs. Yet somehow, Trazyn found one and preserved it alive inside a stasis field on Solemnis. No one knows how he captured it or whether it was the last of its kind before it disappeared from history. The Krork earns 3rd spot because it's a living relic from the war in heaven, one of the oldest and most important conflicts the galaxy has ever known. And if Trazyn ever decides he needs one of the greatest warriors ever created, all he has to do is open the display case. Number 2, the Clone of Fulgrim. Trazyn has a Primarch in his collection. Well, almost. The Primarchs were superhuman sons created by the Emperor to conquer the galaxy during the Great Crusade. They are the heroes and villains in Imperial history, and by the 41st millennium, almost all of them are dead, missing, or serving chaos. Owning one is something that simply shouldn't be possible. The exhibit is a perfect clone of Fulgrim, the Primarch of the Emperor's Children Legion, created by Fabius Bile using his superb skill in genetic engineering. When Bile needed Trazyn's help, he offered the clone as payment. Trazyn accepted the deal without hesitation and quietly added a Primarch to the collection. Somewhere inside Solemnis, Clone Grim is still kept in stasis, or, depending on the day, probably listening to Trazyn explain the museum's newest additions or proper display lighting. The Clone of Fulgrim ranks 2nd because there have only ever been 20 Primarchs. Even as a clone, he's one of the rarest beings in the entire setting. Number 1, Shard of the Deceiver. At the top of the list is an exhibit that almost nobody in the galaxy would willingly stand in the same room with. The Deceiver, also known as Mephitron, is one of the C'tan, the ancient star gods that once ruled over the Necrontyr long before the Imperium existed. It was the Deceiver who manipulated the Necrontyr into accepting biotransference, trading their flesh for living metal and creating the Necron race. When the Necrons finally turned against their masters, they couldn't destroy the C'tan. Instead, they shattered them into countless fragments and locked the surviving shards away because even a broken C'tan was still unimaginably dangerous. One of those shards is sitting inside Salamis. Nobody knows how Trazyn managed to capture a shard of the Deceiver in the first place. The story has never been told yet. What we do know is that he keeps it locked inside a Tesseract labyrinth, a Necron prison built to hold things that are far too dangerous to leave wandering around the galaxy. But Trazyn occasionally walks in and asks it questions about events that happened 60 million years ago. The Deceiver shard claims the top spot because nobody else in the galaxy would willingly keep a C'tan shard in their basement. This is something almost everyone else would want to destroy or lock away forever. That's probably the clearest sign that Trazyn might be the craziest collector in the entire galaxy. Thanks for watching until the end. Click here to check out another video and see you in the next one.